Hello there and welcome back. Today I'm going to be going over what it looks like to get yourself warm in a bot arena before you go into PvP like death matches or into a game. I always find it really helpful to sit in a bot arena and really focus on my mechanics and make sure that everything is good before I go into those extra battles. So I'm going to go through some drills that you can do. I personally kind of switch back and forth in between a lot of these as I'm warming up, depending on what I'm feeling like targeting. But I'll just go through step by step the different ones that you can do, and then you can kind of combine those however you'd like, depending on whether you're just warming up or targeting a specific thing to train on that session. I'll just try and be as thorough as possible so that you can cover all of your mechanics here in this one setting. So first off is going to be something I like to start off with in most of my sessions is exaggerated flicks. So what that means is I'm not tracking, I'm not trying to track and have my crosshair right on the head when I counter strafe. I'm gonna kind of exaggerate the flick, make sure that I'm leaving room to try and warm up those flicks. And something that you should note for all of the drills in this video is that I'm gonna be strafing, counter strafing in between every single shot, almost all the time, except for a couple of targeted drills where I'm doing like warming up my transfers on those first bullets and then actual spray transfers. Obviously those ones you want to stay stationary when you continue to shoot. But for the most part, you do want, consider this its own drill basically. Strafing, counter strafing, shoot, and like separating the timing of that. Even if you're pre-aiming, strafe, counter strafe, shoot, strafe, counter strafe, shoot. And you really want to make sure that you're always timing that as soon as possible after your velocity hits 0 so that you're not wasting any of that advantage that you gained from the counter strafe, if that makes sense. So just bear that in mind. Counter strafes and strafes. This is 50% of Counter-Strike mechanics is movement. The other 50% is aim. So like make sure that your counter strafes are really warm in here before you go. Don't just like stand still and warm up your aim and then say, okay, I'm warm. If you're not making sure that you can strafe over and over again to the right. So this is a strafing drill I like to do, but also warms up the aim and warms up how you respond to that movement, right? So I'm kind of in one direction, adjusting my crosshair and still just strafing left or right, right? So that's a good way to make sure that your strafes are coming to a complete stop. Whereas if you're jiggling, you're only stopped for as long as it takes for your character to start moving in the other direction. So I find that this drill really isolates that, makes sure that you can see for sure that your counter strafes are moving or are working and don't have any jiggle to them. So yeah, that is arguably the most important thing, and that is basically the main reason that I like to do all of this targeted practice in a bot arena where I'm not being shot at and affecting my velocity, because it really does affect how quickly you can warm that up. So um, back to the exaggerated flicks. This is definitely something you want to do for a while, but just keep in mind that the optimal way you want to end your session is not going to have these wasted movements where your crosshairs all over the place. That's why I like to start with this. Like ideally I'll have done an aim lab session before this and the exaggerated flicks won't be as necessary for warming up my aim. But it is still, if my aim does feel like it needs warming up, and just in general at the start of these sessions, I find it a good idea to just like make sure that your flicks are working. But quickly after that, I try and cut out that wasted movement, make sure that I'm pre-aiming and trying to track as I'm strafing and adjust for the change in velocity as I come to a stop so that I can shoot as soon as I stop. So this tracking and then stopping is another great drill that you can do here to warm up. This will get your tracking aim a little bit warmer and start to get you more comfortable with timing your mouse movements to the timings of your counter strafes and strafes, because that is really a huge part of it. When you can sync those up and sync it up differently depending on the range, because the targets in the distance move slower across my screen than the ones close. So when you're locking your eye on the horizon of a far target, that tiny mouse movement of strafing back and forth to adjust to the head is going to be different than, say, like someone way over here. Now I have to move a little more exaggerated, right? So that's another drill, the head tracking and counter strafing. And this also helps to get you into that mindset of zero wasted movement and getting your crosshair in the right position as early as possible and keeping it there, which is really good for that active keeping your mind active on what you're looking at and making sure you're paying attention to what kind of adjustments you need to make in those moments. So we covered counter-strafing, we've covered our flick shots, we've covered our tracking aim a little bit. We'll move on to just minimal wasted movement without doing the same direction of strafes. Obviously, like I said, you can mix and match in there all you want, and in general, you should try to avoid just always jiggling back and forth, and you kind of want to make sure that you're mixing it up and making sure that you're keeping yourself honest and actively looking at what you need to in order to adjust. And it's good to mix it up just to get your mind used to syncing to the various different movements and adjustments that you're going to have to make in your movement. So a lot of jiggling, but still counter-strafing in between each shot. Going for the headshot here. We're not really spraying or anything yet. You could do a couple bullets and maybe start weaving your transfers in there. Once I'm feeling like my first bullet accuracy is pretty good and my counter-strafes are warmed up, what I like to do is start preparing for those spray transfers. So what I'll do is I'll come to a stop and I'll shoot 2 enemies before I shoot another. So not every time, but when you set it up, try and do that. This gets your transfers and your flick shots a little bit more honed, and you can even do 3 enemies if you want, mix and match, do whatever. And I'll transition that into starting to shoot the first few bullets of the mag, getting those nice and warm. Whoops. And as I'm transitioning to this part where I'm starting to try and transfer with those first few bullets, I really want to make sure that I'm still focusing on that first bullet being a headshot, so I'm not panicking and taking forever to get that first enemy and then not knowing where our spray is. It's good practice to make sure that you're conscious of where that first bullet's going and getting used to things. Same with when you're spraying, you want to try and synchronize movement as appropriate. So when you're holding down left click, try not to wiggle. This is something I used to do a lot for a very long time, is like when you're spraying, you kind of want to wiggle. It's like almost a defensive thing. You're a little scared, but try to separate those things and make it so that the only time you strafe again once you've come to a stop and start shooting is either you're crouching and trying to be a hard target and moving away due to being tagged. Or whatever. I mean, people rely on crouching in different scenarios, but generally you want to try not to crouch and slow yourself down unless you're committed to that fight, like you're caught in the open or take some tagging and they slow you down, and you need that accuracy type of thing right away. But yeah, back to that point, just try to remember that anytime you're not shooting, you're starting to strafe until you've identified that next target, and when you are shooting, you're not starting to strafe again until the moment that you stop shooting. So that's something good to focus on that will help get your spray accuracy increased if you are one of the players who wiggles like that. So as my spray warms up more, I try to make sure that I'm doing longer and longer sprays and using all 30 bullets, right? So make sure your spray is fully warmed up. You could do it the same. You can practice the spray drill for both the M4s and the AK if you want to be really thorough. I must admit I've been slacking on the M4 training lately, so if you manage to do that, you're already way ahead of me. But yeah, so spray control, and then once I'm feeling comfortable on that last bit of spraying and getting all 30 bullets, feeling at least a little bit comfortable. If you haven't practiced the spray patterns much in the past, it might take a little more to get there. But once I'm feeling that, I like to end off a bot arena session back to the minimal wasted movement, strafing back and forth, kind of making sure I didn't lose any of that warmth on my flicks before I go hop into PvP. So, and throughout all of these, try to continue to just focus on those fundamentals: strafe, counter-strafe, stop, shoot, strafe, counter-strafe, stop, shoot. If you've seen Jordan Gilbert's videos, you probably have seen him refer to that like breakdown of the process for how to do it. It's a good way to think of it and a good way to get you to start breaking it down in your own head. But yeah, I think that's about all the drills I'll cover today. I feel like that's a good spread of mechanical coverage. Yeah, I'm sure I'll think of something I missed. I'll either add it to this video or make another one separately in the future. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.